Since you've mentioned the case of, CIA, it seems that the CIA is preparing something for Tucker Carlson, and they want to go against him. Here is what Tucker Carlson said. I want to understand, what is your take on that?
Is preparing some kind of criminal referral against me, a crime report to the Department of Justice on the basis of a supposed crime I committed. What's that crime? Well, talking to people in Iran before the war. They read my texts. So the crime under consideration apparently would be the Foreign Agent Act or something like that, acting as an agent of a foreign power. And I don't expect this to go anywhere. I'm not too worried about an actual criminal case against me for a bunch of reasons. One, I'm not an agent of a foreign power. Unlike a lot of people commenting on U.S. politics and global affairs, I have only one loyalty, and that's the United States.
Yeah. Larry, what do you make of what Tucker Carlson is talking about? It could be a serious case that he came out and talked about it.
Yeah, it's not a serious case. There is no legal foundation for this. You're required to register as a foreign agent if you're acting on behalf of a foreign government, and they're paying you and they're directing you, here, say this and do this. I don't, Tucker and I are not by any stretch best friends or great acquaintances. We've had text exchanges over the years, and he's called me to ask to interview on a few issues. You can go back, good God, 23 years ago. No, I take that back. 25 years ago, I was on Crossfire with him when he was, so he was just a 30-year-old back then. But really the fact that he's been told this by friends in the agency or somewhere in the government, in the Trump administration, it's just a sign of desperation. And, I can understand Ratcliffe doing it because Ratcliffe is just a tool of Israel. And, we can't rule out the possibility that he'll come after people like myself and Ray McGovern and Doug McGregor and Danny Davis. They'll try to intimidate. They wouldn't be doing that if they were winning. If the war was going great and they were triumphing as they claim they are, they wouldn't be doing this. So this is just another act of a desperate government. But fortunately, Tucker's got a lot of money, and he can hire the lawyers he needs, and this will be a PR disaster for the Trump administration.
Larry, the other rumors, let's start with these rumors. The other rumors is about Netanyahu, and two recent videos of him are both created by AI.
Right.
And what can you say about the situation around Netanyahu and his case? Because he's not participating in these, in these security briefings that he usually is part of that.
He didn't participate in one. So we haven't seen, I don't know if they've had another that's been televised. I view it as just a distraction because it's not affecting the conduct of the war towards Iran. So I don't know who's putting it out to, it's one of those shiny objects that a magician uses to distract attention. And I think that may be part of it, just distract attention from the fact that the war's not going well for Israel and the United States, despite their claims that, they're wiping out the Iranian Navy. Just as a side note on that, I heard Carolyn Levin, we've destroyed 100 ships. So I went back and said, how many, the CIA fact book, which I just learned they've stopped publishing now as of 2026. But the last one was in 2025. And the total size of the Iranian Navy was, actual ships that float above the water, not including submarines and such, was about 80. So they've destroyed 20 more ships than Iran has as its Navy, which is, again, just the hype, the lying that goes along with these kinds of events.
Donald Trump says that the kamikaze boats, most of them were destroyed by the United States. Here is what he said.
Iran has been. So they put out phony story. The kamikaze boats. The kamikaze boats don't exist. They're fake. And you can almost see that when you look at them. It looks great, yeah. Because if they did exist, we'd hit them just like we hit other boats all over the place. But they don't exist. In fact, some of the people say, where are the boats? Well, how come nobody's seen the boats? You know why? Because it's AI generated. It's fake. And I found, I didn't realize this before we started, but Iran is known for a lot of fake news. And they deal with our fake news. And I actually think it's pretty criminal because our media companies, who have no credibility whatsoever, are putting out information that they know is false.
And here is the video we've got from Iran about the boats.
تصاویر شهرهای زیرزمینی شناوری نیروی دریایی سپاه از خبرگزاری صدا و سیما منتشر می شود.
Yeah, this is for the first time they're showing these, tunnels with.
Yeah. I think those are called bog hammers.
And how come Donald Trump feels that it's all about AI when it comes to the Iranian people coming to the street? It's AI.
Well, if it's if it's AI, then great. Send our ships in there. They don't have anything to worry about. Because I mean, Iran's been 100% destroyed. So what are you waiting for? Iran's 100% destroyed. They've lost. They don't have any boats. They don't have any submersibles. They don't have any torpedoes. What? Open up the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, if that was the case, then that just underscores he's lying, because the Strait of Hormuz is not open for normal shipping traffic, and Iran retains the ability to stop it. And they didn't put all of those those small attack boats out so they could be videotaped and seen above on the water. They've kept them in secure locations, and they'll come out when needed, if needed. Right now, I think Iran's doing, they're doing quite well in shutting down the maritime traffic out of the Persian Gulf. Yeah, all they got to do is call Trump's bluff. AI, great. Then what are you waiting for? You don't have anything to fear, right? I mean, if he says it doesn't exist, then what the hell are you waiting for? Instead, why are you asking for all these other, hey, China, England, France, come on, everybody get together. We'll have a flotilla. We'll open that strait. Well, I thought you said it was all destroyed. I mean, God, I can't keep track of the lot. I'm going to have to get one of those neck braces, that you get when you're in an automobile accident and you get neck whiplash on the neck. I got to get one of those because, I can't keep up with this back and forth. But, my neck's hurting.
Larry, the Trump administration, the other day he was talking about the genetics of Iranian. This is not, they're not like us. They're different.
You mean they're humane, they're intelligent, they're honorable, they're decent human beings, unlike the trash that surrounds Trump? Sorry.
Because it seems to me that he feels the same way that Netanyahu feels about Palestinians. You see all these people, Amalek, they don't see what is, the basis of this sort of mindset. Because these people are so much, if you decide based on these sort of ideologies that you have to fight, you have to go to war, you have to destroy these countries because they're not going to obey. Because Donald Trump, let's put it this way, what the Iranian media, most of the Iranian officials right now feeling about the United States and their strategy in Iran, for example, they say that the United States wants us to be slave or you're going to be destroyed.
Well, look, whenever the United States goes to war, the first thing it has to do is dehumanize the enemy. Because if you approach them like they are human beings like you, it's certainly tough to kill them. As long as you can convince people that they're cockroaches, that they're like in World War I, the Hun, World War II, the Jap, the Slopes, the Slant Eyes, the Yellow Monkeys. Not exactly what you'd call humanizing them. The Krauts with the Germans. And you go back and watch even the cartoons that were put out in the 40s by Warner Brothers with Bugs Bunny. They'd portray the Japanese with big buck teeth and slanty eyes, and make them out to be like monkeys. Dehumanize, then it's easier to kill them. That's what this is about. Because if you show them as they are, and that's one of the reasons that State Department is pissed off at CNN for going over to Iran and showing the Iranians as they are. Oh, God, you mean they're not out clubbing women for not wearing a hijab? You mean they actually have children that laugh and smile and play together? Well, we can't have that. That'll humanize them. So, unfortunately, that's been the U.S. Method of operation for so long.
Larry, Donald Trump was trying to force at least a political move together with European or NATO countries, and he also tried to bring China into the conflict and to say, "Come here and help us to open up the Strait of Hormuz." And the German government said, what else can we bring to the table? What else can we bring to the war? Because it doesn't seem that they're much capable of changing the battlefield. How does Donald Trump feel? It was he wanted some political move, he wanted militarily move, or a combination of both. What is your understanding of what he was asking for?
You mean Trump?
Donald Trump.
Help me. Help me get out of this mess. I wish we should put like a musical track down for these different things that Donald Trump says. Like on this one, I'd use the Beach Boys. Help me, Rhonda. Help me get her out of my heart. Help me, China. Help me, China. And help me, China, please get through the Strait of Hormuz. That would be the lyric, okay?
Exactly.
The Chinese are sitting back going, what's with this guy? Because if you have defeated Iran by 100% destroyed, 100%, no, 120% destroyed, defeated, then why do you need us? I mean, you've defeated them, so why do you need all of us? Should be a piece of cake. Go ahead, send your troops in there, send your ships, go for it. And they're not doing it because the military commanders realize this would be a suicide mission. No, we're backing off. Donald Trump still thinks he's doing the TV show, The Apprentice. It's all staged. Like when he attacked Karg Island. Oh, we devastated Karg Island. He left all the oil facilities, oil terminal intact. Next day, reportedly, Iran was still shipping oil out of Karg Island. Reportedly bombed an airstrip and maybe some I don't know if they were radar sites or what, but whatever he did, it didn't change the strategic or tactical picture at all. And and then you step back and realize there is a reason why the United States has restricted Israel. Do not attack the oil terminals in Iran. Because if you do that, if we do that, Iran then will take out all the oil terminals in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Dubai. Whoever's got oil terminals and pumping oil, Iraq, it's going to disappear. So then it's not just that there's 20% of the world's daily needs for oil is not getting shipped out of the Gulf, it will lose 20% of the world's capacity, period. It'll be taken off the books. And then you're going to be looking at years of shortages. And that's going to have a direct impact on economic growth. So that's why the Trump administration, even with all of its craziness, they haven't given the green light for that. What I do find fascinating is, again, I'll call it the religious conviction of Iran with respect to retaliation. When they did vow, you hit our oil, we'll hit your oil. You hit our ports, we'll hit your ports. The one area, though, that they did not, and one of my readers pointed this out to me, and I'll get you to verify if you think it's true, is when the desalinization plant was hit in Iran. Now, admittedly, that affects about 8% of Iran's ability to produce fresh water. Iran did not retaliate in kind against the Gulf Arabs, because to do so would have meant that many of those countries would have been faced with a complete breakdown of their system of fresh water. It could have really caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And this one reader reminded me that the legacy of the Imam Hussein, and when he fought against the Sunni army, 3,000 man strong army, and he was only with 70 followers, and they were deprived of water for 3 days, and they died in that war. That is a foundation, if you will, of Shia Islamic outlook on the world. And they're not going to do that to other Arabs. They're not going to do that to other Muslims. They're not going to do that they recognize that they're not going to do to others what was done to them. And I thought, that's pretty profound. Is it? You think that's a fair interpretation?
It is. Yeah. That's the foundation of the Shia faith, Larry. And it's not about it. Every year they're talking about it. They're just, it's huge when it comes to the Shia Muslim.
Yeah. And we've seen, the United States spends an enormous amount of effort trying to demonize Shia Muslims. But when you go back and again look at the history of Iran since the Islamic Revolution, Shia Islam has not encouraged suicide bombers, just the opposite. It was during is the point that we talked about on Friday, during the Iraq-Iran war, when Iraq attacked Iran, and then the United States started supplying Iraq with chemical weapons, and first used in August of 1983, and continued to be used 20 times until August of 1988. During that entire time, Iran did not respond in kind. It didn't say, okay, we're going to produce chemical weapons and we're going to use chemical weapons on Iraq. They didn't do that. And I believe it was not because they lacked this scientific skill to develop it. It was the moral foundation of the Islamic Republic, that this is not a contrived belief. It is genuine, and the religious principles undergirding it are quite strong. So, and this is something the United States doesn't grasp. We assume that they are as devoid of moral principles as we are.
Yeah. Larry, you mentioned the case of the air defense system of Israel, the THAAD system and the Patriot system. And we had some reports that their air defense system is getting into trouble because the interceptors are they're running out of the interceptors.
No, you're wrong. They're not running out. They have run out. It's depleted. I mean,
the time of Israel said that. The time of Israel said we're not running out of interceptors.
Oh, well, they said they're not running out. That's a lie. Look, it's basic math, and you're an engineering professor. You can help out the audience here. So 4,000 maximum 4,620 Patriots were produced since 2015. It may actually have been less, because when I did that calculation, they said that during the first 6 years, it was between 100 and 300 were being produced. Well, I went with the 300. If I'd gone with the 100, that's 600 as opposed to 1,800. That's a gap at 1,200. But at the end of that, as of the end of 2025, December 31st, 2025, there were a grand total of it at most of 4,620 had been produced. So let's work through the math. You've got, and the math essentially is this. There's a missile battalion. Every missile battalion has between 4 and 6 batteries. So you can run the math, the calculation of a battery times 4 or a battery times 6. Then each battery can have 72 or 96 of the PAC-3 missiles. So again, that gives you, so at one end you could multiply one battery, one battalion, one battery of 4, and then 4 times 72. So that gets you about 300 PAC missiles at the lowest end per battalion. And then at the upper end, do 6 times 96. Okay, that sets sort of the upper and lower. When you realize that every time you fire a Patriot missile, or you got an incoming missile that you need to defeat, you got to fire at least 2. Now, I'm ignoring the fact that we've seen multiple videos where they fired 4, 5, 6 Patriots at one missile, but let's just go with 2. That means under the ideal circumstances, with 4,620, they could only produce 3,300 or 2,310. They could defend against that many missiles and cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. Well, Iran in the first 15 days of this war, they were firing on average about 50 missiles a day. But let's call it 40 missiles a day. That's 600 missiles right there. So if a Patriot missile had never been fired in anger, that you would have been having a total supply of 2,310. But what we know is at least 1,000 have been shot off in Ukraine. So that, let's go from 2,000, the capability to defeat 2,300, subtract another 500 out of that. What are we down to? That's about 1,800. And so we've just described that they would have used 1,000 in just one. So they're depleted or almost depleted. The situation with that is even worse. They produced from the time they started production in 2007. And as of 2025, so January 1st, they had 900 total. And once again, with those, you fire 2 against each missile. So they're either depleted already or they're almost depleted. But they certainly no longer have, neither the Israelis nor the United States have the defensive missiles in place capable of shooting down Iranian ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. That's a fact.
Many people in Israel, the Israeli media reported that they're not receiving these warning signs before and it seems that there is some sort of internal failure of, in informing the people that a missile is coming, for example. But is that related to the radar?
Yeah, no, that's obvious. When Iran took out the radars, the U.S. radars throughout the, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, and Jordan, they took out some at Al Mawafaq Al Salti Air Base in Jordan. That wiped out the early warning capability. So yeah, that was why Israel's effectively blinded now. The other thing is, with really no air defense, Iran can sit back and hit whatever target it wants in Israel without, they don't have to worry about the air defense systems anymore. And the longer this war goes on, whatever sort of, I'll call them subsidiary systems the Israelis have, those too will be depleted. The concept of air defense that the West has relied upon was based on an assumption that the country would only launch 1 or 2 missiles. They didn't expect about 40, 50, 100. In the early days, February 28th, March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, Iran was firing a lot more missiles, but they were older missile varieties, and they were firing them for the explicit purpose of depleting the U.S. inventory, because they don't have an unlimited inventory, and they cannot produce Patriot missiles and THAAD missiles in larger quantities overnight. It's the system is not. It wasn't automated. It was sort of designed to be built by hand in order for Lockheed Martin to make more money off of the contract. Candidly, and there's some people out there claiming that I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, they're entitled to be stupid, but all you got to do is it's not a great secret. The Department of Defense, with the Congress, proposes a budget, and the budget gets funded, and in that are line items for THAAD missiles and for PAC-3s. So you know what the basic cost is, and you can calculate how many missiles are being produced. There's no great secret. This isn't like some highly classified information. Now, they do want to keep it quiet what their actual inventory is, but you can't deploy and use these missiles as they have been in Ukraine and Israel and then claim, oh yeah, we got ample supplies. No, they don't. They're stripping missiles out of the Indo-PACOM command. Used to be called Pacific Command, but that means with respect to dealing with China as a threat.
Larry, Donald Trump was asked if he's ready to declare victory. He said that he's not ready to declare that. And even though, what is the timeline on the part of the United States? How do you see your expectation is the next 3 weeks that going to be the peak of the war? Because the war is turning into a war of attrition.
Oh, it is.
As you mentioned.
Yeah.
And as time goes by, Iranian official, yesterday we had, the foreign minister of Iran having an interview. He had an interview saying that Iran is not asking for ceasefire, is not asking for negotiations. Even those enriched uranium that were part of the discussions before, they're not anymore on the table to discuss with anybody. And here comes the question to many people are asking, if Iran feels somehow comfortable and they feel that they're confident about their capabilities to fight this war as time goes by, and it doesn't matter how long does it take. But on the part of the Trump administration, do you see any sort of wisdom that what is the end for them? What is the achievement? And what are the main objectives to be achieved during the war that is happening?
They didn't define that very clearly at the outset. I think they were banking heavily on, I'll call them rumors, but the reports that General Ismail Khani, who was head of the IRGC, that Khani was actually a secret intelligence asset of Mossad, and Mossad had convinced the United States that, hey, we got this general who's a cooperating informant, and if we simply kill the rest of the leadership, he can step up to take the lead, and he's got the IRGC. He'll be able to command them, and Iran will fall. I think that was the plan. again, if these reports are true, but I think they are. So once that fell apart, once Connie was discovered and executed, then the entire plan of the regime change and the new leadership of the IRGC that's cooperating with Israel and the United States, that disappeared. And they didn't count. The Trump administration reportedly ignored the warnings that Iran was quite capable of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz and would do so. I'm not sure how far they went in warning about Iran's counterattacks or attacks on U.S. military facilities, but I'm pretty sure that they were briefed and warned about that as well. And then we simply do not know how many missiles Iran actually has in its inventory. Someone I once considered a friend was saying that I was making some of this stuff up, but I'm not. We've seen the images of the missile cities, these underground cities, literally hundreds of miles of tunnels where these munitions are stored and produced. And I maintain that that alone prevented the United States and Western intelligence from getting a good account about how many missiles Iran actually has. All we know is they've fired now over 52 waves of missiles, just wave after wave. They're averaging about 3.5, 4 missile waves per day. That doesn't strike me like somebody who's running out of missiles, number one. So you've got this, you have the United States miscalculating on that front. And they also didn't count on the fact that all of their military installations in the Persian Gulf are being destroyed piece by piece. So I think Iran's demands will be, in fact, they've started to confirm this. Reparations, repair the damage done to Iran, lifting of all sanctions, expulsion of U.S. military personnel from their bases in the Persian Gulf. And, at the same time, it looks like, Iran may actually be doing a favor for the people of the global South by destroying Dubai, destroying the United Arab Emirate. That is one of the most shameful regimes on earth today in terms of the economic exploitation they do of Filipinos and other Asians that have come to the UAE to work as slaves. Their passports are confiscated. They are kept there, kept in inhuman conditions. And then you've got all these extremely wealthy people who've been, using it as Satan's playground. They claim to be an Islamic country, but they're not. They violate every tenet of Islam. And the war is actually starting to, force all those extremely wealthy people to get the hell out because it's not safe. And so it's bringing a form of justice in that regard.